Have you ever felt judged just because you don't have a degree? And when that happens, how do you react? Do you snap, or do you try to stay calm while your chest is burning on the inside? Before you answer, listen to Ethan's story. Not to justify anyone, but to give you another way to look at the moments when people underestimate you. You might even see yourself in him. One evening at the restaurant, the air felt heavy enough to press down on your shoulders. A customer raised his voice from the table by the window, loud enough to make the nearby guests freeze for a second. The dish was wrong. He had waited too long, and he wasn't interested in being polite anymore. Ethan stood there, holding a tray of drinks that suddenly felt twice as heavy. His throat tightened, his face heated up. Every sound in the restaurant faded until only the customer's voice remained, cold and sharp like a blade. He doesn't have a degree. He doesn't have a nice title. And with one more mistake, he knows he could lose the only job that's keeping him afloat. But Ethan's story doesn't start with that embarrassing moment. It starts with how he looks at his own life. Ethan is 27. He once went to college, then dropped out because he couldn't afford it and didn't really know what he wanted anyway. Now, he works full-time as a server in a busy city restaurant, a place no one remembers by name, a place where every day spins the same way as the last. Ethan always tells his coworkers he's just there temporarily. "I won't be here forever," he says with a laugh. But he's repeated that line for so many years that even he isn't sure he believes it anymore. After each shift, Ethan usually sits in the back corner of the kitchen, next to an old fan buzzing loudly, scrolling through his phone and seeing his friends post graduation photos, caps and gowns, awards, proud families standing on both sides. He looks at them for a few seconds, then turns off the screen. Those photos don't make him sad. They just remind him of a part of his life he walked away from, but never fully escaped. In Ethan's eyes, this job isn't a career. It's just something keeping him from hitting rock bottom. He ties on an apron, takes orders, smiles when customers are happy, stays quiet when they're not. Every day looks like the one before it, and he moves through it like it isn't really his life. The long shifts leave his legs aching. But what exhausts him most is the feeling that he's living a temporary life with no idea when the next chapter will start. The restaurant starts paying attention to online reviews. Ratings are dropping because of complaints about staff attitude. The manager calls everyone together, voice firm, saying that if things don't improve, hours will be cut or people will be let go. Ethan stands there quietly, saying nothing, but his heartbeat picks up. He's not the worst employee here, but he's not the kind anyone remembers either. He drifts in the gray area, not great, not bad, just forgettable. And forgettable is usually the first thing to go. Ethan knows he has some bad habits. Whenever a customer complains, his face tightens a little, his tone gets shorter. Not because he wants it to, but because he's always thought, this is just a temporary job. Why take it so seriously? But that mindset starts coming back to bite him right when he's at his weakest. Pressure from the outside keeps piling on. Rent is going up. His credit card balance isn't paid off. His family checks in now and then, and he always says, everything's fine, even though he knows that if he loses this job, things could fall apart faster than he can recover. Some nights when he gets home, Ethan sits on the edge of his bed, kicks off his shoes, and feels like his feet don't even belong to him. He smells dish soap on his hands, looks up at the ceiling, and wonders, where are my friends headed now? And me? Where am I even standing? No one answers, just the soft hum of the fridge in the corner. What keeps Ethan stuck isn't the fact that he doesn't have a degree. It's that he believes he only deserves a temporary life. And life, in its own way, is about to push him face to face with the truth he's been avoiding for far too long. That weekend, the restaurant was so packed it felt like there wasn't any room left to breathe. The ticket bell kept ringing nonstop. Customers crowded the entrance, dishes clattered, kids yelled, and staff shouted orders across the floor. Everything blended into one overwhelming noise that made Ethan's head tighten with every beat. He'd been working for hours, completely drained, his legs feeling like he was walking through sinking sand. But the shift was far from over, and the stream of customers didn't slow. Ethan tried to take a deep breath, moved quickly between tables, holding a drink tray while sweat started sliding down his arm. Then it happened. A difficult table that had been irritated from the start because of the weight looked at the dish he set down, then at him as if they couldn't believe it. "This is the wrong order," the man said loudly. And before Ethan could even respond, the man continued, even louder. "We've been waiting for so long. Does anyone here know what they're doing?" That sound cracked through the room like a split in glass. The whole section turned to look at him. Ethan froze, the tray in his hand suddenly feeling weightless, like it could slip away at any second. His face burned as if someone had held a flame to it. In that moment, he felt exposed in front of everyone. The customers, his co-workers, his manager, and worst of all, himself. A guest at the next table pulled out a phone, held it up, and started recording. The buzzing in Ethan's hands grew louder. His thoughts scattered everywhere. But his body stayed still, unable to react. The manager stepped in after a few seconds, though to Ethan it felt like a full minute. He apologized to the customers, handled the situation quickly, promised to fix the order, and offered a free dish to calm them down. When he turned to Ethan, he didn't need to say a word. His eyes already said it. "We'll talk later." In under 2 minutes, Ethan's worst fear became real. He wasn't just a server anymore. He was the mistake everyone was staring at, the problem the customers pointed to, the person the manager would have to deal with next. When the shift ended, the restaurant closed, the lights dimmed, and the only sound left was the dishwasher running in the back. The manager called Ethan into the room behind the kitchen. No yelling, no insults, just a steady, cold calm that scared Ethan even more. The manager talked about the recent bad reviews, about the pressure the restaurant was under to keep customers, about how tonight's incident forced him to smooth things over with a table that shouldn't have been upset in the first place. Then he said a line Ethan would never forget. "Getting the order wrong isn't the biggest issue. The way you handled the customer, that's what worries me." Ethan looked down at his hands, not because he was ashamed in front of his manager, but because he realized the man wasn't wrong. Then he'd been holding on to the belief that this is just a temporary job, and that belief had seeped into everything he did, the way he spoke, the way he stood, the way he reacted. It was like he was keeping a distance from the very job that was keeping him alive. The manager looked straight at him. "Ethan," he said slowly, "do you want this to just be a job that pays your bills? Or do you want this to be a place where you become so good that people can't imagine this restaurant without you?" Ethan looked up but didn't say anything. No arguing, no defending himself, just silence. The manager went on. "You keep saying this job is temporary. But what if the skills you build here stay with you forever? What if those skills could make you more valuable than someone with a degree?" The words dropped like a stone into water. It was sending ripples through Ethan's mind that he couldn't stop. It was the first time someone had said something like that to him, and it didn't hurt in the way criticism usually does. It hurt because it was true. Ethan always thought he was stuck because he didn't have a degree. But the truth was, he'd never respected what this job could actually teach him. When he left the room, he didn't feel angry or ashamed anymore. Just a long, quiet stillness that followed him all the way home. His steps felt heavy, but his mind was racing faster than ever. Over the next few days, in every small break he had, Ethan started paying closer attention. He noticed the moments when he tensed up with customers, the times he answered with a dry tone. Then he watched the co-workers who always got praised, how they listened, how they asked questions, how they handled problems without getting rattled. It wasn't because they had degrees, but it was because they treated the job like it actually mattered. One evening, while cleaning a table, Ethan whispered to himself, "If I'm staying here, even for a while, I'll treat this like a class I'm getting paid to attend." The thought made him laugh a little, but at the same time, he knew he'd just made himself a real promise. From that day on, Ethan set one simple goal. Every shift, he'd practice one specific skill. Every frustrating moment would be a drill. Not just to survive the night, but to learn how to get better for a future he couldn't picture yet, but for the first time believed he might be able to build. He stopped asking, "How do I survive this shift?" Instead, he started asking, "What can I learn today that I'll never lose?" And that's when the real journey began. Ethan practiced his first skill, listening without being defensive. Before, the moment a customer sounded irritated, his face would tighten. "Yes, that's the policy," slipped out like a reflex. In his head, a voice always muttered, "Don't be so picky." But he began forcing himself to stay quiet, let the customer finish, acknowledge how they felt, and offer a solution instead of an excuse. One evening, when a woman complained that her dish didn't taste the way she expected, he didn't argue for the first time. He just said, "I'm really sorry it didn't turn out the way you expected. Let me fix this for you. Feek, would you like to try this option instead?" And something surprising happened. She softened. The air lightened. And he no longer felt attacked. He realized that staying calm with someone who's angry isn't just a restaurant skill. It's a life skill that works anywhere people interact. The second skill came more naturally than he expected. He started noting small details about regulars, what they usually ordered, where they liked to sit, what they avoided eating. A woman came back for the second time, and Ethan asked, "Would you like the same drink you had last time?" She was so surprised she laughed. "You remember that?" Ethan answered softly. "Of course. You said it was your new favorite." For the first time in a long while, he felt like he was doing something that mattered. Some customers even started saying, "Is he working today? We'd like to sit in his section." A simple skill, but one that made people feel seen, and made Ethan realize he had the ability to create real value. The third skill was the hardest, staying calm when the pressure spiked. Before, every busy rush stressed Ethan out. He snapped easily, blamed the kitchen, blamed coworkers. But he forced himself to treat those chaotic shifts like tests. He practiced prioritizing, giving clear notes to the kitchen, reassuring customers with short, steady updates. One chaotic night, when guests had been waiting too long, Ethan walked up to a table and said, "I know you've been waiting. Your order is being prepared right now. I'll bring you an update in just a moment." His voice was so steady that even he was surprised, and he realized something. Under pressure, most people either break or blame, but he was learning how to do neither. Day by day, Ethan still wore the same old apron. He was still the same server. But the way he walked was different. The way he talked was different. The way he looked at the job was different. He wasn't just trying to get through the shift anymore. He started working as if his future depended on the skills he was building here. And in a way, it did. Change didn't show up overnight. But a few weeks later, Ethan started noticing small signs he'd never seen before. The restaurant's online reviews began rising little by little. Complaints became less frequent. Then one evening, while he was wiping down the counter, the manager handed him a new review. "The food is good, but what really makes this place special is the guy who served us tonight." Ethan read it again and again. It felt strange, almost like someone had placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "I see you." And then one day, right when the doors opened, a group of customers walked in, looked around, and immediately asked, "Is that waiter here today? The one who remembered our order last time?" Ethan was standing in the corner. When he stepped forward, they smiled. the kind of smile people give when they're genuinely glad to see someone. "We were hoping you'd be here. We want to sit where you're serving." He stood there for a few seconds, stunned. A part of him wanted to turn around to check if they were talking about someone else, but they weren't. They meant him. Months earlier, Ethan believed he could be replaced by anyone who knew how to hold a tray, take an order, and smile at the right time. Now he was watching the opposite happen. People were walking into the restaurant just to see him. He once thought he was easily replaceable. Now, customers were coming in and asking for him first. New opportunities started showing up too. The manager, the same man who had looked at him so sternly after that incident, now watched him with a different kind of silence, but one that felt like acknowledgement. One day he stood there observing Ethan handle a difficult table, then gave a small nod. Not a compliment, but to Ethan it meant more than applause. The manager began assigning him to train new staff, then mentioned more than once the idea of making him a shift lead. A restaurant nearby heard about him through online reviews and messaged to ask if he wanted to switch over for a higher salary. Ethan didn't answer right away, not because he didn't want to, but because he knew the most important thing wasn't where he worked now. What mattered was that he had become a different kind of person. Before, when someone asked what he did for a living, Ethan usually said quietly, "I'm just a waiter." But not anymore. Now he spoke slower, clearer. "I work in hospitality. I help people have a good time, and I'm getting really good at it." That line wasn't empty pride. It was simply the truth, a truth he spent years building the courage to accept. He was becoming someone valuable, not because of a degree, not because of a title, but because of the skills he sharpened day after day in the very job he once looked down on. Nothing on the outside changed overnight. Same restaurant, same apron, same menu. But inside, Ethan was no longer the guy who thought he had no future because he didn't have a degree. Because he'd become someone who understood that his value came from what he got better at every single day. And now, no matter where his life goes next, those skills, that change, will go with him. If you're still here listening, let me ask you this. Have you ever thought the job you're doing is just temporary? That one day you'll leave, and then your real life will start? But if you treat it as temporary, you won't learn anything from it. And if you don't learn anything, what will you carry with you when the next door opens? A temporary job isn't temporary if you use it to build skills. And not having a degree isn't the end of anything if you develop the things every place needs. The ability to listen, to communicate, to stay calm when the pressure rises, and to genuinely care about people. What about you? Are you treating your job as something temporary or as a place to train skills that will stay with you for life? If you want to try, here's a challenge for the next 3 days. Each day, choose one situation at work that frustrates you. Instead of complaining, ask yourself, what skill can I practice here? Can I practice listening, staying calm, explaining clearly? At the end of the day, write down one small thing you learned. Just one. But 3 days like that can create a shift you never expected. You may not have a degree, but if you build the right skills, Edie, one day someone will walk in and say, "If it's not you, we'd rather go somewhere else."